What's going on, everybody? It's Toasty here in Commish. Welcome to Plate Coverage. Another episode, another week in baseball. Sorry, it's a couple of days late. I had a little bit of a family issue. He had to coach a little bit, but nevertheless, we are here to talk some baseball. A lot to talk about. We had to narrow some things down for this week, but I do think we have a nice little set of topics. Commish, my friend, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be back. And just a little programming note as well. We're going to commit to Mondays going forward as a recording date. We've been settling into the show. Appreciate everybody watching, commenting. The comments have been really, really nice. The views have been great. The engagement's been awesome. So I just want to let you guys know Mondays going forward, we're going to record, and then Kyle either get that up Monday night or first thing Tuesday morning, just so you guys know when to expect it.
Yep. So it's been really exciting. Man, some of these games, man, it's just so fun to just watch everything. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've had some lucky wins, I've had some lucky losses, but nevertheless, I am so happy that baseball is here, regardless. So
I know I called you earlier today, and I was like, Toast, there's no game on. We had this weird.
I know.
When's the last time we haven't had a baseball game on between like 2 and 6 o'clock on a Thursday? It's we didn't know what to do. Toast took a nap, and I was calling Toast like, "What am I supposed to do with myself?"
I won't lie, it felt very good to take a nap after the beating that I took early this morning. But Orioles came through. Astros money line, Astros run line plus 150 came through. So all is good. But yeah, I could talk all day about my good and bad beats over the last couple of weeks. It's been quite the ride, to say the least. But I guess we can start with some positive things, right? Some going up players and teams and whatnot. You want to talk about the Dirty Water Red Sox?
Yeah, the Boston Red Sox. It seems like pretty much everything that could go wrong has gone wrong with the Boston Red Sox so far. And we're recording the show right now. Somehow the Red Sox are 18-14. They have a better run differential than all but 5 teams in Major League Baseball. The only teams in the American League with a better run differential than them: Cleveland Guardians, Baltimore Orioles, and somehow the Kansas City Royals at this point in the season. The Red Sox, they lost Pivetta. Bayo's been on the IL. Rafi Devers has been in and out of the lineup with the knee issue. Tyler O'Neill was out of the lineup. Trevor Story's out, I believe, for the season. I know he's on the 60-day IL. They're just finally getting Vaughn Grisham back, so they haven't had their starting second baseman all season. There's been a lot of issues with this team as far as health has gone, and they're 18-14. I mean, Boston's got one of the tougher schedules in baseball, but 18-14, they've been able to weather the storm. I know we've talked about them on the show in the past, but the staff that they have has committed to throwing more breaking balls than they ever have in the past. Part of that's Andrew Bailey coming over from the Giants. That's just his philosophy. They're going to throw a lot more breaking balls. But a guy like Tanner Houck coming in, and Houck, like, we were talking about this the other day, and I've talked about this with a couple other people as well, but Tanner Houck's ability to throw breaking stuff in the zone at such a high rate is one of the most rare feats in all of baseball. I know in the past, Tanner Houck, he's been good, and people have jumped on the hype train, and then it's like, there he is. He's screwing me again. Tanner Houck is legit right now. Like, I'm not sitting here saying Tanner Houck's going to be in the Cy Young conversation at the end of the season, but the ability to pound the zone with a nasty sweeper slider on 0-0 counts, to be able to go to that pitch at any point in the count, even if you're behind, it speaks to the larger developments that this organization has made on the pitching front, with guys like Cutter Crawford is no longer a 5 and dive guy. This is a guy who reliably can get you through 6 innings now. You have guys in the bullpen who are, you see everybody throwing either good ride fastballs or a ton of breaking stuff. Like, no one's getting meatball fastballs from the Boston Red Sox, and it's gone a long way in helping them limit the runs against them. I mean, the only teams in baseball that have allowed fewer runs in them, the Royals, the Mariners, the Braves, and that's it. And this is a Boston team that was routinely getting pummeled last season. It didn't matter who the opponent was. It didn't matter what the weather was. And now there's 3 teams in baseball that have allowed fewer runs in them through the first 32 games of the season, plus or minus, depending on your schedule. They've impressed me a lot. I'm very, very intrigued and impressed with Kyle Bodie and everything they've done in the offseason. The organizational philosophy, I think, is all trending in the right direction.
Yeah, they've been a really, really fun team to watch. And man, Tanner Houck, I mean, you can't really say enough positive things about this guy. 24.4% K percentage, 3% walk, 3.5% walk percentage, 62% ground ball weight, expected WOBA of 240. I mean, he's lowered his expected WOBA 100 points since 2003. Number 3 in Major League Baseball with a 33% chase rate. I mean, this guy is an absolute stud. I mean, look at all that red. I mean, his Savant page used to kind of look like a paint by numbers, and now it's just like red rum murder. It's just red blood everywhere. And it's awesome. It's awesome.
And I think it's important to note too, like if you're not familiar with these Savant pages, so it looks like Tanner Houck is getting hit hard in some respects. So you see this 11th percentile average exit velocity, 16th percentile hard hit rate. So he is giving up a lot of hard contact, but you see this 89th percentile ground ball rate, which Toast mentioned.
Exactly.
If all that contact is being hit into the ground, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. He's missing enough bats that when guys do get on base, he's able to get out of jams with strikeouts. He gets a lot of double play balls or a lot of double play opportunities. I know the Red Sox defense hasn't been great, especially up the middle. But I mean, he has really, really figured some things out. And he's a former first-round pick. Like, this is a guy who for the last 2-3 years has been on everybody's sleeper list. Everybody's been waiting for him to take the next step. And finally, it feels like we've unlocked it.
Yep. And now you have that pitching staff getting healthy. And then all of a sudden you already know that what Tyler O'Neill is giving you. Williar Abreu is coming in batting 316 over what of his first 25 games, batting 316 with a 155 WRC plus. I mean, come on now. I mean, that's better than Rafael Devers right now. Connor Wong, same thing, 21 games, his average is a 366 average with a 180 WRC plus. So if they're going to start getting contributions from these guys, Costas, I'm not sure exactly. Do you know how long Costas is going to be out for?
Yeah, they just moved him to the 60-day IL.
Okay, that's not good. But either way, if they get some contributions from those bats, I think the pitching staff is going to be fine. The bullpen, I think, needs a little bit of work, but I do think that having Jansen as a veteran at there does help. So this series against the Twins this weekend is going to be big. Red Sox 6-11 versus above 500 teams. So this will be a good shot with Houck starting him off to start this off right. So yeah, it'll be really fun to watch what they do. That's for sure.
I completely agree. But there's another team that I know you're high on that I know you've been really excited to talk about.
Yeah, it's the Tigers, man. Like this Detroit Tigers team. Look, I understand that their hitting leaves a lot to be desired. Let's just put it that way. I get that. I get that, but at the same time, you also have guys like Mark Canha that is a veteran in that lineup that I like. And if you start getting any contributions from Spencer Torkelson, I think that this team can definitely take a next step with the bats. I'm not actually sure that they won't add anything either. They've been known to make a couple of trades, and I trust Hinch to make some. I know that he's not making the moves, but as a manager with World Series pedigree, I trust what he's going to do as well. And keep in mind that this Tigers team is in a wild card position right now, 18-13. They're playing really well. They're 10-4 on the road right now. And this pitching staff is I mean, really, really fantastic. I mean, honestly, Tariq Skubal 4-0 on the year with the 2.7 ERA with the 2.18 xFIP or a 2.77 xFIP, excuse me. And then Jack Flaherty. Look, I understand that he's had his bad moments, but Jack Flaherty has also been really, really good for them. And if he just finds out a little bit of control, he might be a steal for them coming over. Reese Olson is a guy that I think I'm really high on. I understand he hasn't had the results right now. But again, I just really think that if you have him, Casey Mize, and then if you just get anything out of Kenta Maeda with the bullpen and how well that this –
couple back-to-back good starts.
I was just going to say a couple back-to-back good starts, but then as a whole, this Tigers pitching staff 8th in WAR, 8th in xFIP, 5th in ERA, 13th in Ks per 9, and 11th in BABIP. So it's not like they're even getting a whole super lucky either. So I just think there's a lot of positive things here. That bullpen has been just fine as well. I think that if Lang starts getting things together, they're going to be even more deadly. Again, the Tigers are really hot right now, and they're a team to be reckoned with. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. So
yeah, I
know
them a lot.
Crazy to think, but it's the truth.
It's not that crazy to think, man. We've talked about it a little bit. We talked about it in the AL preview podcast as well. But the Tigers, the whole AL Central has an incredibly favorable schedule relative to the rest of the league this year. Everybody does. The Twins have the easiest schedule by far, but the Tigers, the Guardians, the Royals, the White Sox, they all face a bunch of teams that finished last year under 500. Again, not all of those teams are going to be bad again this year, but you look at the standings right now. This is a division that a lot of people have talked a lot of crap about for the last few years, and for good reason, because it feels like the only reason these teams finish above 500 is because they like someone has to win when those two teams play each other. But this season, the Guardians are off to a 20-11 start, most wins at this point in the season. In the franchise history, going into the Houston series, they just lost 2 out of 3 to them. The Royals, they spent in free agency. The front office said last year was an embarrassment. We're not going to let that happen again. They've put their money where their mouth is, and now they're starting to see the returns. 19-13. The Twins keep winning after a slow start. They get Correa back in the lineup. The Tigers are 18-13. Like, these are 4 pretty good teams, and I think even the White Sox are not as bad as we've seen so far.
White Sox have been heating up. Me and Prop Beaver have been playing their team totals constantly over the last week and been cashing a lot. And keep in mind, guys, the AL Central is the only team the only division with 4 teams above 500 right now. And all 4 of those teams are at least 4 games over 500. So it's not like they're just closely sitting there either. So Cleveland, Kansas City, Detroit, and Minnesota. Minnesota's on a 10-game win streak. That definitely helps. But regardless, they're the only division that can say that. So they're definitely not the laughing stock that we thought they would be. That's for sure.
Yep. No, I completely agree.
I do want to touch. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, it's been a fun team to watch, and it is fun to see guys like Jack Flaherty, who have been down the last couple of years. They come to Detroit, they're throwing more strikes. Velo was way up against St. Louis a couple of days ago in a revenge game, quote unquote. There's a little bit of swag to these guys. Like, they expect to be there, and I think you're absolutely hitting the head on the hammer. Like, Torkelson hasn't hit a home run yet. Riley Green is coming back from surgery, and he's starting to heat up. Like, Colt Keith didn't have a hit for like 2 weeks, and this team's still over 500.
Yep. And the one thing also I think that I'm really curious to watch is this weekend here as we record this on Thursday, that they go into Yankee Stadium this week. Reese Olson on the mound versus Marcus Stroman here on Friday. So I'm really curious to see how they look. I think they're catching New York in a vulnerable spot after playing Baltimore. So I will be on Detroit money line. I've already bet it. So you guys aren't going to see this before then, but just know I said that just in case they go into Yankee Stadium and beat it. Your boy said it. So I did want to touch on one other team, specifically their one unit of a team, and that's the Oakland A's, who have been cashing a lot for me over the last week as well. They're one of those teams that's kind of sneaky under the radar, playing really well, 7-3 their last 10 games. I just want to touch on the bullpen because this bullpen has been absolute nails. I think that everybody knows who Mason Miller is by now. Lucas Eckridge, or however you pronounce his last name, I always butcher it. But he's been just as good, if not even, he hasn't been better. I'm not going to say that, but he's been just as fantastic as Mason Miller. Mason Miller, a 1.26 ERA with a negative .07 FIP. You just really don't ever see that very often. That's how good he has been. And then on the others, and then as far as you keep on going down the list, Austin Adams, another guy, 1.86 ERA. Again, as a whole, the Oakland bullpen, number 2 and this is as far as bullpens go, number 2 in ERA at 2.45, number 3 in WHIP at 1.05, number 7 in strikeouts at 121, number 9 in K per 9 rate, number 2 in home runs per 9, not allowing them. That's a good thing. And number 6 in strikeout to walk ratio. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think, again, this is a situation where I think that people start to overlook Oakland in general when they're betting, or in anytime that you can get this team at a decent price or a nice plus money, it's definitely worth taking it when all these guys are available. We talked about making sure they're fresh. If the Oakland Athletics have their top 3 or 4 guys in the bullpen and a decent starter, specifically a lefty on the mound, it's a really good shot to play Oakland. So just keep in mind that Oakland bullpen has been absolute nails. So just keep that in mind when you're betting.
Yeah, I mean, top 3 across the board. Last year, they finished 28th in FIP. As a unit, they finished 29th in WHIP. They've completely turned that on its head. Part of that is, like you said, Evan Mason Miller, but part of it too is they're getting more length out of the starting pitching. Last year, their bullpen threw more innings than almost any other team in baseball, and for people who don't pay attention to this or just aren't aware, there's a very, very strong correlation between bullpen usage and bullpen performance. And what I mean by that is even the best bullpens in baseball, and we could talk about the Astros and we could talk about the Rays, teams that have a lot of talent in the late innings, if you consistently have to dip into that talent and you're throwing guys 3 days in a week, 4 days in a week consistently, if you're throwing guys 3 times in 4 days, 4 times in 5 days, that adds up. And guys, especially older guys, don't bounce back very quickly. So it might, like the Astros right now have been awful in the late innings. Hader's already blown a couple of saves. Presley hasn't been very good. Montero and Abreu have been vulnerable at times. Part of that is the overuse. I mean, these guys have not been getting deep into games. Framber was out for a little bit with the elbow inflammation. Verlander missed the start of this season. Hunter Brown's been atrocious. They're starting guys. JP France is not someone who gets deep into games very consistently. So a bullpen like that, you keep going to guys day in, day out, and you're going to have issues. And it's going to be interesting to see even a team like the Guardians, who their bullpen's also off to a pretty good start, but now you have Hunter Gaddis has blown a few saves now and he's been pitching 3 times in 4 days, and he blew a few saves in there. Colase 4 times in 5 days going into Thursday. Now they got a weekend series coming up against the Angels. They might need him again. The more you have to go to guys, that adds up over the course of a season. The less you can go to guys, and Oakland has not had to overuse Mason Miller. They have not had to overuse any of their 7, 8, 9 guys because Ross Stripling is not the sexiest name in the world. He got through 6 innings in his last turn through the rotation. Paul Blackburn's giving them innings. JP Sears got through 6 the other day against the Yankees. When you do that, you minimize what you're asking from a unit that maybe doesn't have as much talent as some of the other teams in baseball. As long as they continue to do this, I really don't see any reason that they can't seriously contend for a top 10 bullpen for the entire season.
100%. And again, they're going to be consistently undervalued as well. So It's just one of those things where you just want to note that down because a lot of people are going to overlook that. So
they already got 15 wins. We only need 57 for that preseason over.
We're going to get there. I'm not even really worried about it. I think that was a mistake by the books, an oversight to say the least. But
I don't know. Have teams out of first place. We won't get too excited. We're not getting too excited just yet.
I'm not getting too excited, but 7-3, their last 10. Like I told everybody on the shows, man, as soon as they played well against New York and then they went in and took that series against Baltimore, it's been a different team. It's really, really, really fun to watch. So, but what comes up must come down. Do you got some anything to talk about? Some negative feedback here in Major League Baseball right now?
Yeah, there's I think a few teams that you could talk about in a negative light at this point. I think one team that, as on a team level, that we can highlight is the Arizona Diamondbacks. I know preseason we weren't very high on them for a variety of different reasons. Now they're a little bit snake bitten. Pun was not intended, but it just came up organically right there. But a little bit snake bitten with some injuries. Merrill Kelly on the 60-day IL. Eduardo Rodriguez, obviously on the 60-day IL, had a setback.
That just happened. That just came across today too.
Yep. So that's 2/5 of your rotation right there that you expected to be there. And I know this is getting into your next point here, but Jordan Montgomery, late signing, hasn't looked very good so far. I thought it was a little bit of a weird situation earlier this week. It was with the Dodgers game and the Bees, where Montgomery got hot and then had to sit, and then the very next day comes back and throws again. Like, I don't know if they handled that situation particularly well. If it was me, I would have gone with Gallen the next day and then just had Montgomery go 2 days later. But is what it is. But Montgomery hasn't looked great regardless. He's not missing a ton of bats. Montgomery's not a guy who was overly impressive last year. With Texas, he had a phenomenal defense playing behind him, and I know Arizona's got a good defense behind him as well. But it's a different beast when you're pitching in a division that not only has the Dodgers but also a Padres team that can swing it a little bit. You have Coors Field that he's going to have to contend with at least a few times this season as well. It's not a very impressive team. They're pretty much dead last across the board in OPS, WRC plus, WOBA, ISO batting average against right-handed pitching. They've been able to hit lefties, but you see lefties once, twice a week if you're lucky. They had a good start to the season, sustained by the fact that they saw an unusually high amount of lefties. They faced Austin Gomber a couple of times. They saw Carlos Rodon when he still wasn't pitching very well. Nestor Cortez they got to, and now they're facing a lot more righties. Even righties that have not been spectacular have been having really, really good days against the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're 14-18 right now. I would not be surprised to see the Diamondbacks really start to spiral here over the next week, 2 weeks. Even they've been a high contact team all year. You're starting to see that slip a little bit. It's just not a very deep lineup. Lourdes Gurriel was on a tear to start the season. That's probably not going to last. Corbin Carroll's exit velocities are way down compared to last season. Really tangible, real reasons to be concerned about him.
It's
It's
like
not a
they're
very good
forcing
team.
him in the lineup. It's like, oh, we're going to
Yep.
put you 8th because we can't put you 9th because that's what they're going to write about in the papers. But we can't put you any higher because you're not producing in any way, shape, or form. So,
yeah, it's a concern. It's a real concern, and that's a franchise cornerstone that you have locked up now.
yeah, I think he'll figure it out. I do think that sophomore slumps are real.
Oh, for sure.
But I agree. I think that I know that the Giants have been disappointing, but with some of their pitching at times, I don't think that they're going to be easy wins. The Padres can be a joke at times, but they haven't had any production from their stars and Bogarts and Tatis and Manny Machado. So Tatis and Machado expected numbers are crazy good. So I think that they're going to turn it on. I don't really know about Bogarts or what I can really expect from him. Point being that Fangraphs has the Arizona Diamondbacks with a 30% chance to make the playoffs. That's, besides the Rockies, that's the worst in that division. So it's just one of those things where, like you said, they are snake bitten with those injuries. And so maybe they're good next year. But I think that this is a time that it's probably going to be start fading these Diamondbacks, including this weekend when they play the Padres and they see two very good right-handers right off the bat in Dylan Cease and Michael King. And they're countering with Cerrone the first game. So that should be an easy game for the Padres, hopefully. So, but yeah, like I said, times in Arizona are not going very well right now.
Yep. But I mentioned Montgomery. I know you have some other guys on this Boris list that held up all the offseason negotiations and not off to a great start.
Not off to a great start. And it's just touching on, going down. It's pretty simple to see what teams are good and bad. So I was trying to figure out a different little way to approach this segment a little bit. And I just wanted to touch on the Boris 5 that everybody was paying attention to in the offseason. Everybody that was, I guess, if your team was looking for a free agent, they were hoping that they could get one of these guys. And it hasn't started well for them going through it. Blake Snell, 0-3 with an 11.57 ERA after 3 starts. And now he's on the injuries list with an abductor strain. I don't know when he'll be back. Regardless, it's been very clear with Blake Snell. He's rather awesome or he's terrible. And he's been terrible for San Francisco. I don't know how it's going to get better, but we'll see. Another guy in San Francisco, Matt Chapman, isn't really doing any much. 222 average, or we'll just go with his slash line, 222, 266, 385 OPS. Or slugging. So it's just really, really bad right now for him. And then you go on to Cody Bellinger, another guy on the IL with fractured ribs. He's not doing anything. Batting 226, 320 slugging, 440 OPS. Jordan Montgomery, actually, you just talked about 1-1, 2-7, but he wasn't missing bats. He got just slaughtered by the Dodgers. It hasn't been great. JD Martinez, another one of those Boris clients, hasn't really done anything this year. He's been hurt this whole time. He debuted Friday. I think he had a couple Ks and whatnot. So all those guys missed spring training. And all those guys haven't performed well. And the last time I did look at this, I was reading up on it. And the last time that we saw this was in 2022 after like the lockout or whenever. Lance Lynn signed March 12th. He was terrible in April. He was 0-3 with an 8.37 ERA. Jake Arrieta signed March 12th as well. He was fine in April. He was 3-1 with a 3.49 ERA. And then Greg Holland was a reliever that was supposed to be pretty good on the market. He started terribly. He was 0-1 with an ERA at like 7.5 or something like that. So point being, don't always put all your eggs in baskets with a Scott Boras client when he's building them all up. And you want them in spring training. And if those guys aren't in spring training, it's going to be cause for concern. So if this is going to be something that we see going on in the future, I don't know if it is. I think that this year might really stop that whole let's wait until, as late as possible to sign after all this. But if we do see this, it's something to make sure that we're going to be, as far as a betting community, fading these guys until they show us a reason not to, because it's not just bad. It's been very bad. So there's that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'd have a couple other guys I wanted to talk about, but I do want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it leads into an interesting question. Like one of the other guys I know you have on your list is Alex Bregman, a free
Yep.
agent after this season, not
Yep.
after a great start. He's on the older side, and the way baseball contracts work, it's rather complicated, and it's not anything even remotely close to the way the NFL and the
No.
NBA do it, where you have a rookie contract, you have 3, 4, 5 years on your rookie contract, depending on whether options get picked up, and then typically those guys re-sign with that team. They get there's different levels of max tiers and things like that. Baseball, these guys are under arbitration control for them unless they debut very early, like we've seen with like the Juan Soto's, who's going to be a free agent now in his mid-20s. Most really good baseball players become free agents in their very late 20s or right around the age of 30. And in baseball, there is a very, very steep production decline. It like bat speed, sprint speed, like everything that makes a really good baseball player falls off precipitously after the age of 30. And I think it's interesting when you look at guys like Matt Chapman, you look at Cody Bellinger, you look at Jordan Montgomery. I know JD Martinez is now like on his third or fourth contract after his younger deals. He's on the older side, but someone like Alex Bregman, who's been part of a world-class organization for a decade plus, won a couple of championships, 7 straight ALCS appearances, as durable as they come. The guy's played 160 plus games pretty much every single season he's been in the big leagues. What do you do with a guy like that? It feels like with all of the younger talent signing these early ARB deals, like Julio Rodriguez locked up for 13 years. I know Wander Franco, that contract didn't turn out good for a lot of unsavory reasons, but like he was locked up early. Jose Ramirez locked up before he gets to free agency. Francisco Lindor traded to the Mets, never hit free agency. There's not as like and I bring this up in part too, because like a team like the Yankees, that it seemed inevitable as a kid growing up. Like the Yankees were going to be in the American League Championship Series. The Yankees were a World Series contender every single year. They can no longer buy really, really good players. Like they had to trade for Soto. Hopefully they re-sign him. They developed Judge, and they've developed a couple of other really good guys, but it's more and more rare, it seems like every single year, that we're seeing Garrett Coles hit the open market, that we're seeing Juan Soto type players hit the open market. So when this happens, it's really rare. And like next year's free agent class, I know it's got Soto in it, but like there's a lot of Alex Bregmans. There's a lot of like mid-tier pitchers like the Jordan Montgomerys that you feel compelled to sign just because you need a pitcher. So I'm curious. I know you have Bregman on your list and a couple other guys that are going down, but like in the context too of like what do you do with these guys going forward next year? Like if you're a team that's looking to sign a third baseman, is Alex Bregman on your radar, regardless if he turns it around this year or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would assume that they are. I mean, it's one of those things where I think that the market's going to dictate like who else is out there.
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to have other guys. I mean, I'd have to sort by position. Let's see, third
I'm pulling it up.
base. Yeah,
You can do me.
him, Matt Chapman, Moncada, Justin Turner, Eugenio Suarez. I mean, Joey Wendell. No, thank you. Sorry, Joey. But yeah, I'm just my point to that is it's just I think that I'm pretty sure he's going to get paid by somebody. I just don't know who. Hopefully, like we talked about pre-show, hopefully it's not like the Rockies or something like that.
But
But
would
it's
you
not.
pay him? Like I think I'm more so like someone will pay him, right? Especially when you look at the free agent class, the potential free agent class. Like someone who needs a third baseman is going to pay him. But would you pay a guy who's going to be 31 years old?
Uh, if I had a team that I thought was close to being there, probably. If I thought that I was not necessarily a full bat away, like I felt like I'm not trying to make a case that Bregman's bat is going to change anything, but I think that
Mhm.
having the experience in October and having a pretty decent glove at third base, I think that I would take that in a contending team. Yeah. Again, we're also very small part of this season. So I'm not officially calling him dead just yet. Because again, he's been bad. And just to point out, there's other guys on our list on that list that I wanted to talk about. Paul Goldschmidt, he's had 4 extra base hits in April. Julio Rodriguez, 3 extra base hits in April. You talked about Corbin Carroll, 246 slug. He's not doing anything with power. And then Bregman with a 216 average. I mean, like I said, it's early. But a lot of these guys with with known track records aren't performing at the level that we know they are. So some of those guys are an age issue. Some of it's a sophomore slump, early slump issue. So again, it's just something to monitor and continue to watch, because if you're assuming, or let's just say betting on the Cardinals and assuming that Goldie is going to sooner or later figure out, like, you can't stop doing that, because it's been a month now. I'm not saying that it's never there and he's not going to find it, but you got to look at him as a below average MLB bat now when you're capping Cardinal games. And that's just a simple fact.
Yeah. And I mean, he's been a below average bat now for quite some time. And he's another guy, like, there's just age related decline in baseball. There's just nothing you can do about it. These guys can go to Driveline. Paul Goldschmidt went to Driveline with Nolan Arenado this past season, this past winter. There's only so much you can do to fight the aging curve. It just is what it is. And baseball is getting younger and younger all the time, which, again, the more teams realize how to get the most out of these young players, and we're seeing guys get rushed to the majors like we've never seen before. Paul Skeens just got drafted, and everybody's clamoring for him to be in the big leagues. We just saw Nolan Shaniel come up last year, 2 months after being drafted for the Angels. The Angels also, they skyrocketed Neto playing shortstop. He's up there. The Guardians got Chase DeLauder that they're talking about bringing up near the All-Star break this season. Barely played at Double-A. Jackson Holiday was 20 years old, just got brought up. Wyatt Langford drafted last year. Like, teams are pushing their cheap young talent to the big leagues faster and faster all the time. And I think it's a double-edged sword. Like, one, that, like, you're seeing veterans get aged out and the game is becoming tougher for older guys, but then also you're putting a lot of pressure on younger guys to perform, and you're giving guys like Julio Rodriguez, Corbin Carroll these massive contracts. It's not to say that they're not worth it. It's not to say that Julio Rodriguez isn't going to have 5 more top 5 MVP finishes on this contract, but when you're young, there's some inconsistencies that it's a risk. Like that, I think the best way to put this in context is it's a risk. Like, you can't just plug in Jackson Holiday, a 20-year-old who's never had a lot of minor league experience and never played second base in the minors. It's not fantasy baseball. It's a totally different game. And I think a lot of people, and not to like, shit on any casual fans of baseball. Like, I think everybody should be a fan of baseball, and I'll never shit on anyone, but you can't draft a guy and expect him to be in the big leagues the same way Victor Wembanyama can get drafted number 1 overall to the Spurs and have an immediate impact and, average 20 plus points and almost 15 rebounds a game as a rookie. It just doesn't happen. You don't have, Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III and like these top tier quarterbacks able to just step right in and make an immediate impact for their team. There's a lot of boxes that baseball players need to check, because the game is just really, really tough. And the difference between college ball and pro ball is so enormous in a way that, if you're playing in the SEC, you're probably good enough to play in the NFL if you're a top tier talent. In basketball, I mean, there's physical traits. If you're tall and you have skill, you're going to be pretty good in the NBA, or at least you're going to have a higher floor as you start to learn the game. In baseball, there's just so many different things that can go wrong. Really, really small things. Like, it's a really, really hard, technically precise game. So it's going to be interesting to see where this continues to go, and how it impacts free agency, how it impacts young guys, older guys, how it impacts team building across the league. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. And one other thing I just wanted to touch on too is that teams will let younger guys start to develop more. Take a look at Spencer Torkelson, who's hitting 216, 290, 297 this year. Keep in mind that the league average is a 239 average, 313 on base percentage, 383 slug. And he's barely doing that, but he's the number 1 overall draft pick. And they're sticking with him. So I know Goldie's numbers are essentially just about league average. His power, its OPS and stuff like that aren't league average, but it's just sad. But again, it's just something that needs to be talked about, because I think that some people kind of gloss over that situation. So
100%.
But yeah, let's talk some betting tips of the week though, shall we?
Let's shall. So I know, I think I've started the last couple of weeks with this. So why don't we let you go first this time?
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about splits. I I know that, and just read off a couple of things that I thought that were kind of cool. Obviously, there's a lot of different types of splits, and I just want people, if you're watching, I get a lot of messages about this show and like just they're learning how to do it. Like, just find a split or two that you can understand, and then just try to learn off of that. So it doesn't have to necessarily be left or right-handed pitching or left or right-handed pitching at home. I know, like, if you watch our show, Prop Beaver can do who's good in the first 5 innings, who's good in innings 6 through 9. And there's ways to do that with Fangraphs and stuff like that. But there's also simple ways and simple things to look at who's hot right now, who plays good in the day, who doesn't play good in the day. So I just took the liberty to take a look, and I just figured I'd share this with it. So who are the hot teams in Major League Baseball going into this weekend? Twins have won 10 games in a row. Seattle Mariners have won 7 of 3. The Dodgers are 8-2 coming home. Philadelphia 7-3. Oakland 7-3 as well. So again, that's just a hot team. So let's talk about a split, like daytime splits. Prop Beaver, again, another guy on our show, loves to talk about day and nighttime split. So here's 4 teams that are very, very good during the day. The Atlanta Braves, 8-3 during the day. Milwaukee Brewers, 11-3 during the day. They play the Cubs tomorrow. Orioles, 11-5 during the day. Cleveland Guardians, 9-3 during the day. There's also teams that are bad during the day. Seattle, as Beaver has talked about many, many times in the day, Seattle's a bad team. Rockies are 3-9 during the day. Fish, 5-11. Cardinals, 5-12. White Sox, 2-11. Angels 2-11. So you can start to see and develop patterns. For whatever reason, sometimes teams play well in the day, sometimes teams don't. Or you can look at, like I said, just teams versus lefties. I know that Dodgers versus left-handed pitching gets a lot of slack. Well, guess what? Dodgers are 10-4 when they face a left-handed starter this year. Braves 7-3 against lefties. Guardians 6-1. Tigers 5-0. So there's just little things to pick up on. I'm not trying to make a case when you see a team like the Tigers and they're 5-0 and they're facing a lefty to automatically bet them. But if you know that they're 5-0, you can start looking into that game knowing that they've already had previous success against the lefty, and that's going to help you a little bit more too. So I just wanted to point that out. It's sometimes I think that people overlook the simple things. Those are simple things that I pay attention to. Same thing with run games. Jesus. I like to find out who plays close games and who doesn't, because you'll start to see, especially as we get another month into the season, there's going to be teams that do not play 1-run games. So when betting those teams, there's no reason to take a +1.5 or anything like that. Or on the other side, if they are playing a team that doesn't play, you can play a -1.5 and feel comfortable as well. So yeah, that's what I got for this week. I hope it helps somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to bring up to people. I think, and this feeds into my advice as well. Like splits are so important. Baseball is so cool in the sense that if you're betting on baseball, and it's a very data-driven sport, Fangraphs and Baseball Savant, and there's some other, like Baseball Perspectives is really good, but like really Fangraphs and Baseball Savant, they're free and they have everything you need to find out your answer to pretty much anything. And before I'm gonna talk about bullpen usage a little bit, but just to give you guys a quick little, we'll just go to Fangraphs homepage here. If you go to teams,
bullpen talk. I could talk bullpens all night, baby.
I know you're the the bullpen whisperer. But so if you just go to Fangraphs.com, teams, and you can go to batting or pitching, doesn't matter. Right here, I'll take you to the same page. So this is just the generic splits right here that you can click on. Has almost anything you can think of. If you just want to play around, like if you just have some time, you want to nerd out, go to splits leaderboards. You can sort this by player, team, league. So like when Toast mentions league average stats, like this is something I like when I first started betting baseball. Okay, like Toast just said a guy has a 715 OPS. Well, what does that mean, right? Like is a 715 OPS good? Is it bad? You can go to MLB, you can see batting, and you can just hit update, and it'll give you the league averages. So this is standard. The advanced stats. So an OPS, like a league average OPS is right around 700. It'll fluctuate a little bit based on the day, obviously. 144 OPS. Batting average on balls in play is 288. So we talk about that a lot as a luck metric. If that deviates a lot from 288, typically you're going to see some regression at some point. It's really hard for a lot of guys to sustain a really high batting average on balls in play. And even the worst hitters in baseball, it's hard for them to sustain a really low batting average on balls in play. So when you see that number way off of 288, it usually has more to do with luck than anything else. but you can get this for pitching too. Like if I change this to pitching right here, we mentioned a guy's got a 4 FIP. Well, what does that mean, right? Like, is it good? Is it bad? A 396 FIP, league average, 239 opponent batting average allowed, K percentage. Like I know people love to bet K props. 22.5% is pretty. That is the league average this year to this point. So you can play around with all of this. I mean, there's really, if you want to nerd out, like lefty righty splits are very important as it relates to betting. If you're just a fan of the game and you just want to know more information about stuff, you can get anything you want here.
I was
Handedness,
just about to say, go into the
splits.
actual splits too. You can go ballpark type,
Yeah.
weather, innings, anything like that. And keep in mind too, like things like WRC plus, when you see a plus after it, just know that the league average is always 100. That will never change. League average is always 100. So if you hear a guy saying that he has a 150 WRC plus, that's really, really good.
Yep, 50%. So it's one per, like each, it's indexed to 100. So if it's 110, that guy's 10% better than the league average. If it's 150, 50% better than the league average. So they do that to make it really easy to digest at a glance. But to dive into some bullpen stuff here, I wrote this in response to someone asked me a question on my Substack the other day about, I had broke down bullpen usage in one of my write-ups. And I think I'm going to start doing this a little bit more for different topics because this had a ton of nice comments and traction. People found it really helpful. But so bullpen usage is a really, really important part of baseball that I think gets a little bit overlooked, because if you go and you're going to bet a baseball game, what do you see? It's the starting pitcher listed. And I feel like most people weight the starting pitchers almost 100% in their analysis. Well, this starting pitcher is better than this starting pitcher, so we must have to bet that team for the most part. And, offenses obviously matter a little bit too, but let's assume offenses are equal. Most people just look at the starting pitcher and they say, well, this team should win sometimes. But FanGraphs,
really quickly before he goes, I just want to let everybody know the first thing I do and the first thing I do in the morning and the last thing I do at night is check my bullpens and update my bullpen usage. No matter what, that is the most important thing to me personally, is knowing where my bullpens are, who's fresh, who's not fresh. But go ahead.
Yep. And I do the exact same thing. And the reason that I do it, and I'm sure it's a similar reason for Toast, is your bullpen usage dictates your strategy in a game. So if you don't have guys available, it impacts what you're going to try to do throughout the first 6 innings to try to avoid putting yourself in a vulnerable position late.
Talk about Logan Allen tonight. It's a great example.
Yep. And that's what I was going to get into. So bullpen usage, this is free on my Substack. You can access the links in my Twitter account. But broke this down, bullpen usage and all the step by step. So if it's easier for you to go to this instead of watching through the video and trying to find it. And then I also broke down bullpen for performance. So where you can get some of those splits that Toast was just talking about. He mentioned the A's and how good they've been in the late innings so far. But if you go to fangraphs.com, you go to roster resource and then just go to 2024 closer depth chart here. It's a really unbelievable tool. And Toast actually turned me on to this. There's a few different sites that have bullpen usage. This is the most comprehensive in my mind. And they update their numbers really, really quick. Like if you go on at 2 a.m. Eastern time, usually this will be updated. A lot of the other stuff won't be updated until the morning of. So they're really, really good about getting this stuff updated. It not only has their role and where they are in the pecking order of a bullpen, but it also shows you where they've pitched. A guy like Kimbrel was dealing with a bad back and was unavailable. So they'll list that for you. So you know that. You can see how many pitches they've thrown. You can see their stats for 2024, which includes, this is velocity on their fastball right here, velocity on their slider. And then you see the ERA, stuff like that. But as far as strategy goes, Cleveland was a perfect example going into today's game. So Logan Allen, not a very good starting pitcher, didn't have a great matchup today against the Astros, but the Guardians really had no choice but to push him as long into that game as possible. It came back to bite him because he gave up that 2-run homer and they went down 3-2. But going into this game, the Guardians had played 4 consecutive extra inning games. Not only did they play 4 consecutive extra inning games, but they won a couple of those and had a chance to win a couple of them. So they used Clase 4 times in 5 days. What that means is he's not going to pitch the 5th day or the 6th day here. You're never going to see a guy get used 5 times in 6 days. Gaddis, some high pitch counts, blew a few saves. They probably weren't going to try to use him. You see Barlow used 4 times in 5 days. Sandlin had been used. Heron back-to-back days. Kate Smith back-to-back days. So what this tells you is, okay, from a strategy perspective with the Guardians, like every team is obviously, they go into every single day trying to figure out how to win, but baseball's a 162-game season. So sometimes you have to sacrifice the battle, so to speak, to try to win the war. Today, the Guardians really only had Tyler Beatty and Pedro Avila. I believe they went to Sandlin after they took what's his face, Logan Allen, out of the game,
because they
but
were still somewhat in that game.
they were, and I think a little bit unexpectedly. But the reason we bring this up is the Guardians, like, so an outs prop, like Logan Allen's outs prop today was at 15.5. Typically, that's not a spot that you would play an over with against a Houston team that usually does pretty well against left-handed pitching. Today, though, it made all the sense in the world to play it, because if Logan Allen was even mildly effective / mildly efficient, they were going to try to get some outs out of him in the 6th inning, which they did. He got 17 outs in this game. But this really dictates strategy, and it really dictates your win probability in the late innings. If you don't have Clase, if you don't have Gaddis, if you don't have guys who are used to pitching in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning with a lead, and you have to go to guys like a Tim Herring or a Cade Smith or a Tyler Beatty, guys who have a lower K percentage, guys who are much less effective when it comes to run prevention, opposing teams are going to have more opportunities to score runs, which obviously increases their chances of winning. So you can look at opponent team totals. It also informs, like we would never, if you liked the Astros today, there was absolutely no reason for you to bet them in the first 5, because they had a significant bullpen advantage. So it's stuff like that, really important as it comes to betting. It's also one of those things as a fan of the game too. If you're going to a baseball game, or if you're talking about, your local favorite team with your friends, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they didn't use Clase tonight. Well, if you try to use Clase 5 times in 6 days, you run the risk of increased injury risk. Not only that, but velo could be down every day that a pitcher pitches without having full rest. So typically, like, if you could use a reliever Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 15 pitches or less, they're probably in good shape. If you have to throw them back-to-back days, that second day, a lot of times you'll see velo or spin rates down, which makes them more hittable. The other thing people don't realize is, so like Clase, I'll bring this back up for a second. It looks like he didn't get used a whole lot. 13 pitches, 9, 14, and 5. So it's like, oh, he's probably, like, he probably could go again. Like, he can't be that fatigued. What this doesn't show you is these guys all throw 15, 20 pitches at least to get loose in the pen before they come into the game. So whatever these pitch counts are, you have to remember there's a lot more that goes into that. And teams have to try to win 95 games over 162 games. They're not just always trying to win the game immediately in front of them. I mean, they're trying to win, but they're not trying to win at all costs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where you can pay attention, and then you'll start to, and when you paying attention to this on a daily basis, you start to notice patterns. If they use guys 3 or 4 days, if they don't use guys 3 or 4 days, if they use a certain pitcher, like in the 7th, they want to use him, the same guy in the 8th or the next guy in the 8th or the 9th. There's patterns with it as well. And keep in mind that Cleveland also had to go on the road and start another series this week, starting on Friday in California as well. So if they were to going back to capping this game at the beginning of it and not knowing the score, if Cleveland were to get down early in this game with Logan Allen on the mound, they weren't going to use any of those guys. They were essentially going to throw in the white towel to save them all for the next day. So, and that's essentially ended up what happening. So Astros piled it all on late. But yeah, it's just, bullpens are a huge, huge, huge thing to pay attention to. That is for sure.
100%. And then we'll just we'll run through real quick just some K targets for the week. I know it's a little bit later in the week at this point, but it still stands. And again, this is also on my Substack each week for those who are interested. I break down last 7, last 14. I also have some terminology here, so if you're unfamiliar with some of the advanced analysis, this is a quick reference guide as well. You can access all this for free. A lot of this is also on Fangraphs as well, but you have the league averages. I update this each week. A lot of teams that are making a lot of contact right now: Royals, Astros, Padres, Guardians, Blue Jays, Rangers, Dodgers. You see all these teams here. Some teams not making a lot of contact: the Pirates, the Reds, the Angels, the Rockies. My God, Edward Cabrera had 8 or 9 strikeouts today in 4 innings again. The Brewers as well. The Cincinnati Reds have not been able to hit anybody. I mean, I swear to God, we could send Prop Beaver out there tomorrow, and I think Prop Beaver's K line would be over under 4.5. They've been that bad. It's been pretty unbelievable to watch. The one thing that I think I continue to stress over and over again, and I still see people not putting enough attention and emphasis on, is umpires matter so much, especially with teams that take a lot of called strikes. So the Padres, they make a ton of contact. They don't swing and miss a lot. They make a ton of contact on pitches in the zone. They foul off a lot of pitches on the edges of the zone and slightly out of the zone. The one Achilles heel that the Padres have, they take a ton of called strikes. So you can see the Padres up here. I'll blow this up a little bit so you can see this red right here. There's a lot of green, and then there's this red. They take a lot of called strikes. What this means is when they're facing a team, if they're facing a pitcher that has decent command, and there's an umpire that has a slightly bigger zone, the Padres are susceptible to more strikeouts that they might not be susceptible to on another day. So umpires matter a lot. Like I cashed under 4.5 on Graham Ashcraft a couple of days ago against the Padres because it was a hitter-friendly umpire. So Ashcraft wasn't going to get a ton of called strikes. And in baseball, the difference between 4 strikeouts and 5 is oftentimes the difference between winning and losing a bet, because the K-prop market is very, very sharp, especially as more and more people bet into it. It's important to get an edge any type of way that you can. So again, I mean, these are the teams that are making a lot of contact, these 7 right here, and then some 5 low contact teams. I'll update this again on Wednesday. And this is another thing that you can get if you go into FanGraphs and look at splits. You can find all this stuff. Never hesitate to reach out, DM, comment. We love that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love reading the comments. the comment whoever wrote Toast got Jackson Holiday sent back to AAA. I love you. We were laughing about that for 5 minutes. It had nothing to do with Jackson Holiday though. But anyway, couple feel good things before we get out of here for the day. I just got one guy I wanted to mention, and that's Jurickson Profar, who plays for the Padres, played for the Rockies last year. He's like a 10-year Major League Baseball veteran, but has been playing so well. They have actually taken Xander Bogaerts out of the leadoff spot. Jurickson Profar is now the leadoff hitter for the San Diego Padres. And if you want to know why, he's been on fire. Over his last 8 games, he's 15 for 30. And as a whole on the 2024 season, 342 batting average, 21 RBIs, 953 OPS for Jurickson Profar. And he's one of those guys. He's like one of my favorite guys in baseball. He speaks like 7 languages. Everybody in the clubhouse just absolutely loves him. He's just one of those guys, and I know that isn't going to get a lot of play, but who's been, as far as the national media is concerned, but has been balling out of his mind right now. And so I wanted to make sure that even though I am a Padres homer, he's been balling out of his mind. So I definitely wanted to make sure that he got some flowers this week on the pod.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's fun seeing guys bounce back. I think Spencer Turnbull's a guy for me that he missed all of 2022 to injury. He hadn't thrown more than 140 innings. I mean, he hadn't thrown more than 60 innings in a season since 2019. He comes back healthy this year for the Phillies. He's benefited from some really good luck on balls in play so far, but nonetheless, I mean, the guy's got a 1.67 ERA through 6 starts. They were going to pull him out of the rotation, and with Taijuan Walker coming back, and we just found out today that they're going to leave him in the rotation for the time being. When you see guys, especially veteran guys that have battled through injuries or battled through struggles and been cut and had these trials and tribulations that they've experienced in their career, come back and have some success, I have a ton of respect for those guys. Like, baseball is a really tough sport. It's a tough sport on your body. You're away from your family a lot. It's a really, really tough thing to be good at baseball for a very long time. A guy like Turnbull coming back, having some success, striking out a career best number of guys. Command's been pretty good. I think even with some expected regression built in, this is a pretty effective arm at this point. I think he's just worth highlighting. He's one of those guys that had a lot of promise with Detroit earlier in his career in his mid-20s, and just never got to be on the mound. Had some really, really bad injury luck, and now he's with a good team that has a chance to go to the postseason, and he's giving them really quality, meaningful innings, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, it is. It is really cool. One other thing I wanted to touch on, because I just think it's really cool, baseball related, then we'll answer a question that there was asked on the YouTube comments. I just love that in general, people want to say like baseball is kind of dead. It's like a dead man walking sport. And so I just wanted to say that a Major League, not only has Major League attendance been really good this year, essentially they're averaging about 27,000 fans per Major League Baseball game. That's the highest since 2017. And that's a little bit of an increase since last year. And then on the national TV broadcast, so like Fox, ESPN, MLB Network, all that stuff, Fox has a 29 or 25% viewership average going up, more than it did last season. ESPN's Sunday Night Baseball has increased 19%. Live games on Major League Baseball or MLB Network, up 13% or more. And then the coolest part, especially for someone like me that has young kids in the house, the increase in younger viewers. MLB on Fox has seen a 32% increase in viewership among fans ranging from 18 to 34. Sunday Night Baseball is 38% in that same demographic. Viewership among adults 18 to 34 has increased by 50%. It used to be baseball. Like I said, baseball is a dead game. It's for the older crowd. And now that we have all this young, swaggy type guys in this league, we're starting to see a lot more people fall in love with the game of baseball, which is what we're all here for. And so I couldn't be more happier to say all that.
We love when people love baseball.
Yeah, man. It's just awesome. I love it. I can't. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Do you want to answer the question for us?
Yeah, I'll throw it on the bottom of the screen too. So the question that we got was, how much do you think the fact that the Astros have a new inexperienced coach has to do with their struggles? Also, I want to point out before we get into this question, last week on the show, Astros were even money to miss the playoffs. They are now minus 155 to miss the postseason.
I mean, we served that up on a platter for you guys. I mean, I'm just letting you guys, just saying. I put a full unit on it. I don't know about you, but
I have a lot of money on the Astros under on their season win total. So I'm going to let that ride. I think that's in pretty good shape at this point. But the question that we got, again, how much do you think the fact that the Astros have a new inexperienced coach has to do with their struggles? What do you think, Toast?
0. I mean, I'm not trying to like undermine like Dusty Baker or anything like that, but I do 100% feel like he's been dealt a very hard hand. I mean, not to mention the injuries, the players not performing. I don't know what more that he could do. I guess maybe it has a little bit to do with just turnover, but I don't really feel like there's one or two things that he should or could be doing that's going to magically make this team good. I mean, the starters are all hurt, which obviously is going to make your bullpen bad. I mean, I just don't know what else he could possibly do.
I agree. I think it would be easy to say, oh yeah, new manager doesn't have control of the clubhouse, yada yada yada. I think the more plausible answer in my mind is the team just isn't very good. And I think not very many people wanted to admit this during spring training, but there's not a whole lot of talent here other than the core that's been there for quite some time. So like Altuve's obviously been very good. He's on the older side. Kyle Tucker's been very good playing at MVP level. Yordan Alvarez has been very good. Jeremy Pena has been a nice surprise, but Jose Abreu was literally sent down. He's been arguably the worst hitter in Major League Baseball this season. Alex Bregman has given you absolutely nothing. These guys that everybody was expecting to be serviceable bats, Chas McCormick, Jake Myers, they're lefty killers, but they really have not been able to hold their own against righties very much at all. I think defensively, Yainer Diaz being behind the plate. I know Martin Maldonado wasn't great last season, but we've talked about there's value in pitchers being comfortable with a guy who's calling the game. There's value in the way he sets up, the way he talks to you, the way you go through your pregame meeting, you warm up in the bullpen. Like all of these things matter a lot, especially when you have a veteran core. And the Astros, they're just not getting a whole lot of production out of their entire lineup. And I mean, you look at the long ball, you got 3 guys that have 7+ home runs, and then there's just not a lot else. They're still making a lot of contact. I mean, that's just the organization's philosophy. But not to disrespect Dusty Baker, not to disrespect any of these really good coaches in the league, because you do have to manage personalities, and I don't think that's an easy thing to do, especially at that level of baseball. But the Astros just they just don't have a lot of talent, man. And like in Justin Verlander coming back, he's 41 years old at this point. Thank God for Ronel Blanco, but like look at these numbers that we have from the pitching staff to this point. I'll sort this by, we'll go starting pitcher, and then we'll look at the relievers after that. But one, they've already used seven starters, which is not ideal. Ideally, you'd be at 5 still at this point in the season, or maybe 6 if you needed a spot start. Framber missed some time. He's been pretty good. Ronel Blanco's pitched out of his mind, way better than anyone could have expected. Arrighetti had a nice start against the Guardians today, but hasn't been very good to date. Justin Verlander's not missing any bats. JP France, this guy will be out of the rotation before you know it. Hunter Brown hasn't got out of the first inning in every single one of his starts. you can't blame a manager for that, in my opinion. And we talked about starters not getting deep into games. Well, what happens? You have guys like Josh Hader who have not pitched, significantly on back-to-back days, or have had heavy usage patterns in recent years. The underlying stats look a little bit better for Hader, but he's blown a couple of saves so far. He's walking a fair amount of guys. Presley's a little bit on the older side, but Montero, Belak, and Brian Abreu have all been very, very vulnerable. And they've been used a lot. These guys have already appeared 16, 15, 14 games. And I don't know. I don't think you can blame a manager for that. I think it would be unfair. I agree with you.
Also, I also think that I think that in their mind that Josh Hader was going to be a positive, and maybe it wasn't. Maybe that Ryan Presley wasn't okay with that. I know that he's never going to say that, but now he's being pressed into a role that he's usually not doing. Maybe that's something that's mentally with him. But regardless, Presley and Hader have decent FIP and XFIPs, but the fact of the matter is they have a 6.39 and a 5.68 ERA, and they're blowing games. So, and then on the others, like you said, on the other side, the smaller, other guys, the XFlip and stuff like that are just terrible. So it's like, that's really, really concerning. So I think they're just bad. And I think that the pitching has really helped for a long time. And like he just documented, using seven guys and only a couple of them even being somewhat decent is going to kill you and your bullpen. And honestly, and when these guys are hitting, I know that Altuve and Tucker and Pena are starting to kind of have numbers, but at the same time, I don't really feel like they're driving in a whole bunch of runs. So it's just one of those things where it's like, what do you call it? Empty calories. There's, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of how I feel though. Yeah. It's just how I feel. So it's just kind of empty calories. So,
but it's a really good question. It's a really good question. And again, like if you guys have more questions, we're happy to explore them week in and week out. We'll pick a few as time allows. And, the ones that we don't get to, maybe we'll get on Twitter or, like Substack or whatever. We'll make sure to get your questions answered. We like to hop in the YouTube comments as well. It's really, really cool, guys. We really appreciate the support. They're really nice comment. Like we genuinely sit here and we go comment by comment and just like, can you believe someone said this? Like, how cool is this that someone enjoys listening to us? So we really appreciate it. Again, we appreciate Kyle letting us have this platform and be on his channel. But it's fun talking baseball with you, Toast. It's fun having these good questions from the audience, and it's fun work. It's just fun talking about the game and thinking out loud with these people, and because we're learning a lot as we go too. The game is evolving every year, and we're learning alongside you guys in many ways.
Yeah, and you're also kind of walking on a little bit of I don't want to say eggshells because there is data, but I do, like, again, when I talked about the guys from, the Boras contracts and stuff, that doesn't mean that things can't turn around with Goldie and Julio and Bregman and whatnot, Corbin Carroll, all those guys. That doesn't mean it can't turn around. I'm just saying that those are some things to watch and whatnot. So the more that we get into the years, the hotter the takes are going to be. Some of you guys are going to absolutely hate me. Some of you guys are going to love me. That's just how I am. I play to the crowd. But yeah, please keep the comments coming. It's been really, really fun. Also, I want to know what you guys want to learn from guests. I want to bring some couple guests on. I have a couple guys that have played Major League Baseball before that said that they would come on. I just want to make sure when I do it that we were ready to go, and what we want to ask them and stuff like that. So if you have questions like that of what you would want to know, just to give you guys a really quick example before we get out of here, I just wanted to talk to him about Sunday Night Baseball. We all have our little trends and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk to a guy about what is it like playing Sunday Night Baseball, and why is it so hard on you? And what's the process of you going through the media and the hotel and the flight and stuff like that? So maybe when people start talking about the Sunday Night Baseball fade, then they're going to have a concrete reason behind that, or at least an understanding behind that, not just me telling you it's a Sunday Night Baseball fade, you got to do it. So it's just stuff like that. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns like that, I'd love to hear from you. I know Commish would too. But yeah, we're about an hour right now, so we should probably cut it. We're going to be back in a few days because, like I said, we did this one late. So every Monday, we're going to stick to that. So yeah, for Commish, I don't know if you have anything else, but if not, I'll talk to you guys all later.
Sounds good. See you guys.